Hello, everyone. I'm Molly Casey, Chief Curator and co-founder of Nine Dot Arts, and today I'm joined by our partner and friend, Dominic Weilminster, also known as Wild Monster, founder of Points West Design Works. Dominic, it's about time we had you on the show.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
excited to be here.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's so great to have you. Oh, well, let's just jump right in. You've worked across massive global firms and now run a nimble local practice. Can you give some background on your career trajectory, and how opening your own practice has shifted the way you approach design?
Yeah, sure. Opening my own practice has been an adventure, but I started out actually in a past life. I was a newspaper journalist, and then
Wow.
I changed careers and decided to pursue architecture. I was fortunate to work for a great local firm called R&L after I finished graduate school, and I stayed there for the first essentially 15 years of my career. When I started in architecture, it was around 2008, and that was during the Great Recession. It was a pretty stressful time to be working,
Yeah.
and I I have to say I attribute some of my career trajectory to a combination of not knowing any better and just being interested in the design process and engaging myself on projects that I got the opportunity to work on. And my career in leadership at R&L, really, I can attribute that to YouTube cat videos, because during the recession, we needed something to boost the culture. For me, as a student intern at the time, I was like, this place is so stressful. I need to do something to sort of take the edge off of this work environment. So I started something called Fun Day Afternoons,
Oh my gosh.
and we did design presentations in the office as well as just funny videos and stuff like that. So um, that started the ball rolling in terms of my role at R&L as a leader culturally and a leading design voice there. Um, Thankfully, I was able to progress and become a principal there, and one of the kind of design director voices in the office. In 2017, we joined Stantec. So R&L merged with Stantec. Stantec's a large global practice. And I eventually became the practice lead for the office and then the regional design director for the US West. Um, that was a very different dynamic. Stantec is a global practice with a lot of offices all around the world. There's pros and cons with any scale of business, but in 2022, after really debating it for probably 5 years, and my wife probably tired of thinking it through with me, I branched out and started Points West. And so to
Congratulations. Just
Thanks.
like huge congratulations. That's a big jump, and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
deserves the attention that you need to acknowledge how cool that is. It's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's I have an appreciation, obviously, having worked at different scales, that um, there's a role for different scale firms to play
Right.
across the world of the built environment. For me personally, my journey to starting my own practice really came down to me recognizing that when I got into architecture, one of the things that drove me here is to be a good creative design voice within my own community.
Oh,
And um, although I've had great experiences doing master planning internationally and architecture across the country, um, I really wanted to just get back to working in my own backyard and more kind of broadly within our industry, and certainly here in Colorado, there's been an influx of national firms that have merged with local firms. And I was part of that, obviously, when we joined Stantec. And I felt strongly that there's a quality that comes with practicing locally, that kind of a client care and a knowledge of your community, that you can really practice authentically better as a small practitioner, or as a local practitioner, I should say. And so I wanted to get back to that and be able to have my attention be focused on the local communities here in Colorado and the Mountain West, where I've always been. I'm kind of a homer. I'm a native of Colorado. I for better or worse, I've never made it out of the state. So,
I'll tell you, it's hard to, you leave and it's really hard to not come back. I've done it a couple times.
Yeah.
You can't beat it. That is, okay. Before we jump into more about where you're at right now, because that's such an interesting story to see you go from, journalism of all things to now owning and running your own practice locally. I'm curious what it was that took you from journalism to architecture. I mean, they're both creative fields like this.
Yeah.
You're writing, you're designing, there's definitely, I can see some overlap. I know that you are incredibly creative and thoughtful with your practice, but how did you make that jump? Like, what was it?
Yeah, well, journalism, I mean, I surprised myself by getting a degree in journalism, I think.
Oh, okay.
I'm
doing what now?
So, if you think back, and probably a lot of people can relate to this, when you're in undergrad, you kind of have an idea of maybe what you want to do, but not everybody, can project exactly what you want to do. So I knew that writing came easy for me, and I enjoyed it. And so I pursued that in undergrad, and I had a great time. I wrote, I found myself being a feature writer. So in newspaper journalism, feature writing is a little bit longer form. It's more kind of the human interest side of things. And you can write with more of a narrative voice. So I like that as a little bit more creative. And so I got an internship at the Rocky Mountain News because I won a feature writing award in college. And when the Rocky Mountain News existed, I did one of my prizes for the award was to be an intern there. And that was a great experience. It got me opportunity to then get a real job. So I moved to Durango and wrote for the Durango Herald. And I was an education reporter and city reporter down there. And, journalism is, it's a difficult job. It's a really important job. I almost think everybody should take some journalism courses, or I should say media literacy courses, because to have that background, to be able to interpret where your information is coming from is really important in today's landscape. Yeah. But for me, while I enjoyed writing and the creative aspects of that, I found myself being not wanting to always report on cool things that are happening, but I wanted to become someone who's helping contribute cool things. So that started me down the path of thinking about, okay, what opportunities are there for me to use creativity, but maybe apply it in a way where I'm creating things. And honestly, architecture wasn't necessarily immediately on my radar, but I used to kind of, I was sort of like a fan of architecture and sort of had my own idiosyncrasies with being a little bit anal retentive design wise. So I was like, well, maybe I'll give this a try. And I remember I had to do a week of basically like basic drafting for people with unrelated degrees once I
Oh,
decided to go to graduate school. And I remember I was so nervous I couldn't like draw a straight line with a ruler or with like a straight edge.
yeah.
I was like, and I remember biking home after the first day, and I was like, I have made a huge
Oh
mistake.
no.
But as it turned out, by my second semester, I started to realize that the process that I learned, the thought process that I learned in journalism,
Yeah.
where you take lots of different kind of disparate information and you have to boil it down into something that both is succinct, makes sense, and is hopefully has some like beauty and readability to it. That thought process suddenly clicked, and I was like, oh man, this is the same process I go through when I need to think about designing a space. And
That's
so then
fascinating.
all of a
Then it
sudden it
worked.
started to make sense for me. Yeah, I stopped having that thought that I had made a huge mistake.
Thank goodness. And
Yeah.
really, thank goodness you did keep sticking with it, because I always enjoy working either alongside you on a project or hearing about what you're working on, because the way that you approach projects is um it's just interesting to hear your thought process every time and what excites you about a project. And you just bring up things that I would never have thought of or thought anyone else would have mentioned. So it's very cool that you ended up where you did. Thank you.
Well,
Thanks
you
for doing
know,
that for the
I
world.
I think a lot of how I maybe approach work, I
Mhm.
can maybe attribute to that journalism background because if I had just gone straight into the design field of architecture, I maybe wouldn't have gotten the education in
Ah,
human experience that I got in journalism because there's a lot of people, soft skills, and observation space
yes.
that you get, and it's really like we're in my mind as an architect, I'm designing places for people, and so uh, taking the time to be able to understand how places work, that's like
Yeah.
really huge uh, skill to have to apply it. So
Well, and to listen too, right? Like, I think as a
yeah,
journalist, you're listening to so many things and, like you said, distilling it down. And I've seen you in action do it and be able to take, a room of people that all have differing opinions and get everyone by the end to agree on a direction.
yeah,
And it's incredible, because that is a skill that I do. That's interesting. I do think that that's probably where that came from. I have not always seen, not everybody works that way.
yeah, yeah.
That's
It's
cool. Well, thanks for going down that road with me. I was just curious about that switch, because it's dramatic change. Just all of a
oh yeah,
sudden say, I'm going to go be an architect now. So we've had some folks from the Nine Dot Arts Studio who said, now I want to go be an architect now that I've been exposed to so much of it. And so I think it's just always nice to hear, how did you decide to go do that, and what have
yeah,
you benefited from? Um, so question two, back to sort of like working for, this international firm at Stantec to now your own um, personal firm, Points West. What do you do differently that you couldn't do before? Like, what feels more accessible or less accessible? Like, what are some of the
yeah.
differences between those two?
It's interesting because on one hand, I'm very grateful of the path that I took because uh, I can look back on my past experience working for RNL and Stantec and draw from a really excellent practices, and so
Yeah.
something that I actually think is cool to be able to do as a small practice is to bring that sort of sophistication of process and knowledge to clients that maybe aren't even aware of that being how to work with an architect because a smaller client, they maybe can't afford to hire a big fancy firm, and
Right.
so the level of service they get um, can vary quite a bit at the scale of being a small practice.
Hmm.
So that's something that I am thankful both from a practitioner standpoint, but also maybe from how I can help clients out perspective. But as a small practice, the other thing that I think a lot about is you have the ability to focus on the work. I was just meeting with someone this morning, and I was talking to them about how, as a smaller business, you get to make the decision about, how much do I really want to put on my plate, and you can evaluate the work that is on your plate and be able to discern between, this is a really important opportunity, and I need to be able to give this a lot of my mental energy, or I need to, hustle and make sure I'm getting new opportunities. But like I have a project that is under construction right now, where the client was a big client for me. And I got to give them great attention and be thoughtful about lots of aspects of their project. Where when I worked at a larger practice, the volume of work is much larger. So you have to be a little bit more like an inch deep and a mile wide versus being able to dive deep on things. So I think that's something that's pretty cool. The other thing I think is great is, because you don't have some of the external pressures, or you can kind of write the rules when you have your own practice, the way you shape the design process on a project can be tailored, and sort of you can really sort of squeeze the lemon of design on certain things to make sure you're being like true to the opportunity that's there. So the example I would give is, like, I'm super excited. I'm about to start a new project where it's a community mental health center. As part of that project, we want the design to reflect the community. We want the design to be a source of wellness for the people that use the building. And so during the concept design phase, I created these 10 principles of restorative design by drawing on trauma-informed design, arts and culture, and biophilic principles that we can bring together to make sure that we're thinking about the right things to make the design as beneficial as possible to people. So being able to incorporate stuff like that is cool.
I love that, because you really you have the time to really dig into that, and you can collaborate with the client maybe a little bit more than you were able to before, and really start to unpack some of those things. And
there's just a little bit less red tape around some of that stuff, or less external pressures. I will say, this is kind of a funny story. I occasionally I gave a lecture at CU Boulder. They have like a professional practice class, and so I was asked to go in there and talk about what working at a big firm is like, and what working for yourself or a small firm is like. And so I was telling my story, and I was saying how at my previous job, I was a principal, I was a regional design director, I had a fancy title, and now I have my own practice, and some days I wake up and wonder, does anybody know if I exist? And but I said that in a kind of a joking way. But when you're small, there's like times where you're like, hey, you're less of a big fish. And after I got done with the lecture, one of the students walked up to me and he goes, hey, I really appreciated what you went over today, and I just want to say I'm sorry about your loss. And I was like, what? And he was like, well, you said you used to be really important, and now you're not important anymore. And I was like, oh man, no, oh my God. It's just a different way of practicing.
Oh, Oh,
So
that's what a sweet student, though. How kind
yeah,
to be so thoughtful, like really thinking about you and
yeah.
your
It's like, well,
existential
yeah.
crisis.
Can I call you sometimes? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is really funny. But no, I think it's true. I mean, when you are, when you are smaller, you are kind of saying, "Hello, I'm over here. Don't forget, like I have
Yeah.
got this practice." And I think it's really cool too because it does allow for when you do dig in with those clients, um when you're finding, especially the local ones, when you are working more regionally, you develop amazing relationships.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you
It's like
really
you have fewer projects, fewer clients,
Yeah.
but you have this much more connected relationship, so, which is very cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's special. It creates a nice long-term relationship where you're making meaningful changes. Like you can see the meaningful changes happening in front of you.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my next question. Um, so your company values include design as optimism, which I feel like we're kind of dancing around at the moment. Um, and you also emphasize that the work should always be fun. And this is what makes me think a little bit of the mental health project, right? Like mental health isn't necessarily thought of as fun or
Yeah.
optimistic, but it is. I mean, like it can be. And just the thoughtfulness that you brought with trauma informed design and art and culture and thinking of these other things, biophilia, things that we know are beneficial. I feel
Yeah.
like that's a great example
Yeah.
of you bringing those values to life. But I was curious how you got to that ethos. I mean, some architects are just very serious, very academic, very, like very much this is a serious thing that we need to, pay respects to, which I don't disagree with. But I, of course, if you know me, I'd prefer fun and optimism over serious any day.
Yeah.
So I was just curious how you came to that, and how do you keep that running true and through on projects that might be a little bit more difficult?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so the the way it's written on my website is it designs a form of optimism, and I got that from a former leader that I used to work with, and like that design as a form of optimism to me is speaks to the way that you approach any of this work, and it's that everything that we do, it's kind of like I think the doctors have like the Hippocratic Oath where they
Yep.
do no harm or whatever. The way that we ought to think about our work is that we should, if anything, as architects, our clients should pay us to some degree to be optimists on the project, because there's so many
Mm,
constraints that often drive great things on projects, and there's practical constraints like your budget and schedule, all that stuff.
yep.
But to get to design that really supports people's wellness or
Mhm.
supports a community's wellness, then we have to believe that what we're doing can have a positive impact. And so that's
Mhm.
where, there's tons of projects out there that are pretty pragmatic, and there's certainly times where you're not going to have every project be this fairy tale thing, but um, there's usually almost every project has some um, human interaction component to it,
Right.
where like that's your little nugget that you can dig into to make that project better.
Oh, cool.
Is the East Side Human Services facility for Denver Human Services, and that building, when we started working on it, um, the the conversation was around how do we create a secure facility, and it's another mental health type facility, so it,
Right.
it has um, the security is an important priority,
Of
and
course.
privacy, and so there are these very serious conversations about how we deal with that. But there's also like a component of that project where we I started to talk about how can we give people a dignified experience. And there's research out there that shows that if people are in spaces where they feel sort of respected and dignified, that incidents of vandalism or perceived safety incidents of vandalism goes down,
Right.
perceived safety goes up, people's sense of their community investing in them goes up. And so that became a driver for that facility. And so we ended up creating a secure facility, but it has these bright atrium spaces that are full of art and full of daylight that are welcoming to the people that, at other Denver Human Services facilities were being feeling marginalized, and also creating kind of security issues. And I remember when that building opened up, I was like walking through doing a warranty check with the contractor, and I was wearing like a vest and a hard hat, but I didn't look like a contractor because I was wearing like loafers
Architecture
or something,
clothes.
and a guy came up to me in the parking lot, and he was like, "Hey, did you do any, like, did you design this building?" And I was like, "Yeah, I was on the architecture team." And he said, "I take the bus across town now to come see my social worker here because I feel good coming to get help here
Oh my God.
versus one of the other facilities." And so that was like one of the coolest experiences. And that really for me was like, well, this is a perfect example of design being able to be optimistic in a serious situation. So
That's really powerful. I mean,
yeah.
just and to have that unsolicited feedback of, validating those choices and really taking those design options into consideration and moving them forward. I mean, it probably would have been really easy for you to just not do that.
Yeah. And if we're, if we like allow ourselves to be a little bit optimistic and hopeful, chances are we have a little more fun in the process too, because we're like focusing on some positive things with design. So that's the we should have fun part of it too. Is this is getting projects done is stressful. Stressful for clients, stressful for contractors. It can be stressful for the architecture team too.
Yep.
And so everybody has to work really hard, and people have to take risks and stuff like that. But at the same time, if we set our sights on something that's optimistic or hopeful, it takes a little bit of the edge off, hopefully. So
yes, I luckily get to play in that sandbox a lot because art is usually the really fun part.
Totally.
But it's also, I think, design is also incredibly fun, especially in those like initial stages of figuring out, what does this space want to be and how do we make it come to life? And what are some of the values that we want to bring and infuse into the design to create amazing spaces that people literally want to be in. Like he goes on the bus across town just to go to that site because it makes him feel good. That says a lot about the power of architecture and design.
Yeah.
Love that. Thank you for that example. That's incredible. Well, speaking of constraints, you mentioned that there are always project constraints. We know some of the hard tack ones like budget, timelines. But I wanted to find out how you approach those constraints and how you sort of like can work with them to turn them into an opportunity as opposed to something that could be a barrier. What are some of those constraints that you're dealing with right now specifically, and how do you approach them?
Sure. Well, I mean, almost every project has constraints. I've worked on projects that have had like almost unlimited budget. I've had a couple instances in my in my career, and it's actually like that in itself is kind of a constraint because you kind of can do whatever. So I almost prefer having constraints. The constraints that most commonly come up, and particularly now are budgetary,
Mhm.
a little bit less time constraints now, because at least locally, because the economy is at least the building industry is not going at the pace it was over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
The time constraints generally are maybe a little bit less intensive, but budget is a really important one. And I guess the way that I think about this, and this is true for, this isn't like some special recipe for, this is probably true for a lot of architects, but this is something that I really just embrace, is I know almost every project is going to have constraints. I like to figure out what those key constraints are as early as possible, and then just be honest about making sure that the design is achievable and reflective of those constraints, and then also where there's opportunities, if you have a highly constrained project, where there's opportunities to apply design, it's like you need to find where those are and make sure you're prioritizing those key spaces. So like in my mind, trying to force design or fussiness across a whole project when it can't be afforded, is like gonna break everybody's hearts. The architect's gonna bust their butt and have to value engineer everything. The client's gonna be stressed out because they are gonna have their heart set on something that's not achievable. So it's not that you aim low necessarily, it's that you're just try to identify what the realistic strategy is from day one. And the way I always think about it is that if the design is simpler, that means you can make all the details really shine, because
that's a good point.
You're not kind of plastering everything, and not everything needs to be on volume level 11 either. So
no, in fact, that's usually overwhelming.
Yeah. And there's times, I think, where some of my favorite architecture is quiet. It's, whether that means that it's good, it contributes to the context of a neighborhood, but it doesn't shout for attention, or it's architecture that the experience of the space allows for calm. It doesn't need to, it's not begging you for attention, so I think those are strategies where you can have a constrained project and still come out with a beautiful project. So that's like, I don't shy away from constraints. I kind of like figuring them out. And I can point to past project examples where it became just such an important part of the project to have those constraints, that it made the projects better. Like I don't want to drone on too long here, but
tell us. I think this is the stuff that's really interesting.
Like one of my favorite examples is another past project. I had the great privilege of doing a renovation at the College of Architecture and Planning at CU, where I went to school. So my professors were my clients. I remember
also kind of scary.
It's like, a little stressful. In the very first meeting, one of the people came over to me and said, "Dominic, there's no way you're ever going to get any of us to agree to everything."
Was that your challenge? Did you take that challenge?
We, on top of that, we had a really tight budget, but the big idea of the design is that the students are there to learn the basics of design, and the basic fundamentals of design deal with how you work with materials in an honest way, how you work with details in a legible way that shows the craft behind the detail, and how you order spaces in a way where it contributes to the spatial experience. And so taking those as like the key principles of the design education that's taught there, it helped to inform how we dealt with this difficult budget constraints and with the difficult client constraints of everybody not wanting to agree. So first, I got the clients to agree that yes, these are the principles that we're trying to teach the students. And then the second thing was, in those principles is honest use of materials and clean detailing. And so the materials we used were very basic. It's like blackened steel, which was probably the fanciest material we used. It's drywall, and it was basically the same grade of plywood that they use for concrete forms. So it's like the lowest grade of plywood.
Yeah, sure.
And the plywood has all kinds of imperfections, but it's just put together in a way where the students can understand how it's built. It's beautiful, but it has like a wabi-sabi character to it. It can wear with time. And, we got it to meet the budget, so it was.
And you can't, the professors cannot disagree with that design because it's literally what they're teaching every day. So
exactly. They're like, well, we can't. You
can't argue with that. Yeah. That is so smart. And I love that use of simplified materials. Our first office was over in the taxi building, and I love that simplicity of design there too, with these materials that otherwise you would pass by and be like, ugh, those are materials I don't want to be around. But then when you use them in the right way, they're really beautiful, and you can see the utilitarian purposes of them, but also that they can serve a bigger purpose. So that is a really cool example.
Yeah. And it's like the student work is what should part of the space is like gallery space, and it's like, as you know, curating art, it's like the space needs to take a backseat to some of this stuff. So it was like,
let the architecture do the work and the space be the blank backdrop.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so cool. I just actually got to hire one of my professors for a project. I was like, I can't believe this is happening. It was amazing, and it was so much fun.
It is fun.
So speaking of the simplicity of this design, I'd love to dig in a little bit more to what your aesthetics are. I mean, obviously you're responding to clients and their sort of like demands, needs, thinking about budgets and constraints. But I know that a lot of your work emphasizes sort of simplicity and restraint, and you were mentioning some of these, projects where it's okay to be quiet. It doesn't need to be loud and in your face.
Yeah.
So what does simple elegance look like in maybe a more complex project? And I don't know if you have an example, but are there times when you have to sort of say, oh, we're going to pull back on this. This is getting overly complicated, or this is getting overly designed? I mean, how do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, the design process should include an editing process. It shouldn't be always additive. And so, sometimes, and this is maybe just me speaking personally, I can feel like, man, I'm not being fancy enough with my creative thinking. But oftentimes I tend to gravitate toward design where it's very clean. Probably most important for me is thinking about human scale space. And so if there's a reason to break up a building design, and if there's a reason that I don't want to come across as like a strict human emotionless modernist, like there's like a really important human dimension to design, whether it's we see it most often when we talk about like the streetscape and the pedestrian realm, but we should be thinking about it as frequently as possible through designing spaces for people. The simple elegance, I guess, is sometimes something that as a designer, it can sometimes be a hard thing to get towards, because you can feel pressured or feel like you have a lot of ideas to bring to something.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times, the way I think about it personally, the way I've coached other designers in the past is to, sort of take time at moments as you're developing design and really be able to understand what you can pull away and what is fundamentally important to keep. And that usually can help gauge for you whether what you're doing is an elegantly simple design or, an overly complex design. I think there was a Norman Foster, who's a famous British architect. He had a client that asked him how much his building weighed. At one point, there's a documentary, I think, that's even called that, and it was like this crazy question, but it became this foundational thing for him, where he was like, you know what, am I designing the most elegant solution with the least amount of material or whatever?
Yeah.
That's quite a larger challenge than just trying to do, very fancy, very complex building. And so, this is an interesting thing when you're working, particularly with working with a client, is as a designer, you have a opportunity to blow their budget and show them something, right, and just hope maybe I can convince them that this is so cool they're gonna find another $1 million or whatever. Or you can sort of take it as your own responsibility of I need to be a steward for their budget and put something forward that fits, what they're trying to do. And this project behind me is actually an example. It's under construction right now, but it was one where we actually started the project out with a little bit more complicated design, and the client did like it, but then when it came time to reconcile that with their budget, they kind of had a change of heart in terms of what their long-term plan was.
Okay.
And you can sort of feel sorry for yourself at that moment as a designer, or you can, or you can just embrace it and lean into it. And ultimately, what we're doing with this project is an addition onto this company's onto an existing building.
Oh, so you think about how it integrates as well.
And it's ultimately it's not the front door. It doesn't need to be shouting for attention, but it can be a beautiful addition to the block and a nice, quiet, sophisticated addition to their building, and that fit within the budget, and it'll be a pretty little building when it's done. And so I think I said it already, not everything's got to be volume level 11. So
yeah. I really appreciate that. I get a little cranky driving around Denver sometimes.
Yeah. I follow your Instagram, Molly. I know. The other thing I think about is if Japanese architects are very good at this. There's a quiet confidence that comes from designing simplicity, and it takes more discipline to do that well than to sort of keep throwing ideas at things. So I just think it benefits people in multiple ways.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think you also, as somebody who's using this space, you learn to appreciate that simplicity for a much longer amount of time than if something sort of is at volume 11, where it hits you, and then by the third or fourth time you're like, yeah, I get it. Okay. Yeah. There's less sort of, I don't know, appreciation overall for the simplicity, but also there's less to sort of uncover.
Yeah. I will say I'm glad that there are people that are really good at being more maximal and I love that stuff. It's not necessarily where my brain goes naturally, but we need all that variety,
Yeah,
so
we
like
do.
it would
Otherwise,
totally, if everybody did what I just said, it would totally suck,
it would
so
be
we need to,
boring.
yeah. And
It'd
I'm
be
not,
so
look,
boring.
but at the same time, if everybody made everything, shout from the treetops, it'd
We
be
would
like,
need to have eye masks on half the time. We
yeah,
couldn't,
yeah,
we
it'd
would
be
like not be
like
able to look around.
overstimulated. Yeah,
Yeah. No, you're right. It is a balance. Absolutely. And it's fun. It's fun to go experience the different ones too. I think that's the thing that can provide inspiration for new design and other opportunities. So it's variety is critical in the design
Yeah.
world for sure. Plus it's more fun because there's more variety, the more we can critique.
Yeah, yeah. And I also think like you don't have to do one or always do one or the other. There's going to be stuff on a project
Yeah.
that maybe the project needs to be very simple, and there's a little jewel box area where you can make it this surprise moment of delight.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That makes it really impactful if you do that.
Yeah, it's not 100% in either direction.
Yeah.
There's balance.
It's a really non-committal portion of the interview.
All right, let me see. Now I'm off topic because that was fun. So okay, I want to get back to our collaborations, bring it back home. So we've been able to collaborate on a lot of art master plans with you, and we love bringing you into those projects. Pearl Square, Wildlight, both of those happen to be in Jacksonville, as well as the Denver International Airport Art Master Plan, which was a really, really amazing project that I'm very proud of. And I wanted to know how you would describe your role on this, because we're usually coming in under an architect, but here you're coming in under an art consultant. Yeah.
Well, I mean, these projects are like some of my favorite things to work on. It's a change of pace, and it speaks to that design as optimism thing, to be able to work with public art, and I find it just so enjoyable to see the range of public art that we get to view with clients on the projects as we kind of vision what the flavor of the art is. So my role is really, if it's a community or say a development, or an airport, there's kind of a whole network of how people use those spaces, and a hierarchy of how those spaces are designed. And so the way that I view my role is to start by first mapping the existing conditions of those spaces. So it's kind of a forensic exercise almost of going through and understanding how a community works, or how a plan development is planned to work, and then be able to identify where it makes sense for art to play a role in either contributing to an existing space, or the cool thing with art is that it can play a role in being like a breadcrumb trail to get people to activate other spaces. And so the first part of my involvement is always that kind of understanding the systems that are moving these communities around. And then the next layer is when we start getting into art locations, is collaborating with the 9-Dot team to think about, okay, where can art go? What types of art make sense in different locations? Is this a primary priority piece of art, or is this a secondary, or be nice if you could do it over here level of art? So that's what the way I try to help out. And I just cheer you guys.
Our cheerleader. Thanks you, Dominic. No, it's just great because I think you have such a valuable background in these large scale master plans, and thinking about how people currently are using a space, or how we want to intend them to use a space, because ultimately it's always, guessing game of how people will actually use a space,
Yeah.
right? You might intend it for one thing and people might adopt it for something else. And you're like, oh, that's cool. Okay, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
I mean,
your voice.
the um, the Wildlight master plan example, that's in a large plan development down in outside of Jacksonville, and they have like this amazing trail network planned, and they've built out portions of it. The overall development's like years gonna develop over the course of decades, but there's, you know, in some ways, like there's communities where they're going to be introducing this amazing amenity that doesn't even exist right now,
Right.
and they're rolling the dice on hoping that the community takes advantage of that trail network. So we talked to them about the opportunity for art to show up along that trail network, to be a way to draw people out there. We talked about art on that trail network being a way to connect with the local art community. So maybe there's a component of local art integration that happens out there. So it's like thinking creatively on multiple levels about how people use the space, how it reinforces the art community in the area. It's ends up being like kind of a multifaceted benefit. That's
Absolutely.
what I really like about those community art plans. So
me too. It's fun and optimistic.
Yeah.
But serious at the same time, because we really have to think about how it all works together.
Yeah.
Budget.
Yeah, totally.
So question for you, what should architects understand about working with art consultants that maybe they don't always consider? Any little
Well, they're super fun people.
wisdom? They're super fun people.
Yeah, well, I think a few things is when you're working on a project, sort of putting in a plug for integration of art early is really important. It's almost important for the architect just to voice it, not just to put it on the client's radar, but to put it in your own head as you're thinking about the design. Because if the design is planning to accommodate art in some way, then it's going to enhance the integration of the art. So that's one thing. Along those lines, there's opportunities to think about if you are truly integrating art. Art is sometimes an opportunity to trade out or enhance the architecture. So, you know, speaking of like budget constraints or whatever, you could, I don't know, instead of paying for a standard fancy ceiling in a lobby, maybe it's got an art piece worked into it, and you shift the budget around so that you have something that's more original than originally anticipated in the space. So I think those are kind of pragmatic considerations. And the knowledge of working with like a art consultant like Nine Dot, just to be able to, because there's so much art out there, and there's so much, and art can encompass so many types of things, that early engagement with your team is something where you might get an idea that for art integration that you didn't have before.
Yeah, that's true.
And then the last thing I'll say is there are projects where representing the neighborhood or the community is fundamentally important to that project being accepted in its place, and art is a way to do that. It's a way to directly involve the community, but it's also a way to reflect culture or inspire culture in an area. So I think it's it's something that should be thought about in the same way that on a project we need to be thinking about. We may have a private parcel of land, but a portion of that land either interfaces with the public realm, or we have the opportunity to create an enhanced public realm by giving back just tiny bits of our project, and art
Right.
integration in a project is another way to do that, where it's like we're going to add delight to our community by putting in little surprise moments. So I think there's so many good reasons. So
That's awesome. Thank you. Those are key points we always think about, but it's nice to hear it that it's true on the other side too.
yeah,
You see the benefits.
I mean, not everybody is as cool as me.
No, this is true. This is true.
Just
Facts right there, man. Well, I want to just close this out with a final question that we ask everybody. It's my favorite question. Can you share a recent place, experience, or artwork that reminded you why art and culture matter? Struck you about it? It's a hard question.
The thing that I is probably most front of mind for me right now is I'm about to. I think I mentioned it earlier. Like I have the privilege of working on this project that'll be a community mental health center, a maternal mental health center. So it's like a mental health center that has peer-led support for women, and it's in historically underserved neighborhood in Denver, and it's something where it's powered by the strong community culture in that neighborhood. And so this is the project I mentioned earlier, where I've put together these kind of 10 principles of restorative design. And within those principles are ideas about integration of arts and culture. And so I have that in the background. I've started to be kind of doing some pre-research and design thinking, sketching on that project. And the population in the area is largely Hispanic, largely from northeastern Mexico regions. And it made me think about my wife and I were in Mexico year before last, and there is art integrated in the most like vernacular, simple ways, because in like small towns in Mexico, everything is kind of crafted by the place and the available materials, and you talk about like not having a high budget. These are things where it's local craftspeople are putting their culture out there on display directly through their work, And so we were at a little local cafe, and it had a little courtyard, and it had like the most beautiful pergola kind of thing around the perimeter. And the pergola, like you could make a pergola in a standard way. This was like taking rebar and making this ornate, elaborate, really cool thing. But you could tell it was made by someone who just cared a lot, had some skills, had the materials, and it created a beautiful art piece within this beautiful landscape courtyard. And that to me was like, well, this is something that like the community probably loves. Anybody at any income level here can probably feel like they feel represented there. And people not from there, like us tourists, we were like, this is amazing. We don't have this sort of craftsmanship, readily available. We have whatever. You could go try to find someone that does this, and it would be astronomically expensive or whatever. But so that trying to encapsulate that experience of what I would say was an art piece was really inspiring in that moment, and is something that is exciting in maybe find a way to apply some version of that in my work here, hopefully.
Well, it's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. Those moments, those little moments when you find something so unique like that really do stick with you. It's just, you're like, I don't know where the person came from or what they were doing, but they
Yeah,
did this really awesome thing. And now we all get to enjoy it, and it's approachable and it's for everybody.
yeah,
And it just beautifies the space, but it's also functional.
yeah. I mean, it was like I like the term like delight. It
Mhm.
was that to me implies that it was something unexpected, and delight is not like your head explodes kind of excitement. It's kind of like this like, whoa, this is amazing, and it brings a smile to your face. That's kind of like what I love. And there's public art examples out there
Yeah.
that bring that, give you the warm and fuzzies like that.
Yeah, the ones I think the lights. I love it. Oh, well, thank you so much, Dominic, for joining us today
Thank
on the
you.
podcast. It's always a delight to talk to you.
Yeah. Well, I like talking to you guys and all your team, so this is
Yeah.
fun.
No, it's really fun. So appreciate all of your insights and the value you bring to all the projects you work on. And I'm excited to see what happens with the mental health center you're working on. Can't wait to see that come to light.
Yeah.
That's
Awesome.
great. And if our listeners want to learn more about you and your work, where can they find you?
Go to pointswestdesign.com.
Awesome. Okay, we'll include those links and other topics you heard today in our show notes. But with that, we'll say I'll bid you adieu and have a lovely rest of your day.
Thanks, Molly.
Thanks, Dominic.
See ya.